hello everyone, and welcome to our online Shift the Scene question and answer session. I'm just going to share my screen because we've got slides to go along with today's session. Hopefully you can see that okay. Can't seem to move this Zoom message. There we go. Hi, so my name's Carol Reid and I'm the Programme Director at Youth Music. So I'm in charge of our grant making function. I'm a white woman with brown shoulder length straight hair. I've got brown glasses on and a white blouse with black spots, and I've got a headset on as well and some red spotty earrings. I'm here today with Jess. Jess, did you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Jess Richards, my pronouns are she, her. I'm one of the grants and learning officers at Youth Music, kind of currently leading on this Shift the Scene fund. I am a white woman with kind of bob length brown hair. I'm wearing a multicoloured jumper today.
Thanks, Jess. And we're also with my colleague Jana, who's not on camera, but Jana's just going to kind of be here in the background, just kind of keeping an eye on tech and just helping us things to run smoothly. So just to tell you what to expect from today's session, and first up, apologies that we don't have the most dynamic PowerPoint, so we're not going to be getting any submissions to TEDx through today's session. However, we just wanted to make sure that we're giving you all of the information that you need, and we'll be able to send you the slides afterwards as well. So in the next 50 minutes or so, what we're planning on doing is just running through some of the headline kind of background and criteria about the fund. We hopefully will provide you with a bit of clarity on the pre-submitted questions that you sent us. Then we'll have a bit of a break, and then we'll end by taking some questions from the floor. So it might be that things come up today while you're listening to things that you want to ask us about. Hope that sounds okay. Just a bit of access and kind of housekeeping. So closed captions are enabled. Feel free to have your camera on or off. And if you need to step away, then feel free to do that as well. We will be recording the video and posting it on our YouTube for those who couldn't make the session. Please let us know at any point if you'd like us to repeat anything. We might not be able to see you if you put your hand up, so feel free just to come off mic if you do need us to clarify or repeat anything. But otherwise, if you could stay muted while other people are speaking, just to avoid any background noises, that would be fab. So there's going to be some time for questions at the end. If you think of a question when we're going through the slides, then feel free to pop it in the chat and then we'll come back to all of those at the end. Or alternatively, you can just put your hand up when we get to that point. So first thing first, I can see quite a lot of new faces here on the screen today. So who are Youth Music? So we're a national charity. We help marginalised young people to make and monetize music. Every year we raise £10 million to fund inspirational grassroots music projects and aspiring young creatives up and down the UK. We campaign to break down barriers for young people facing inequity, exclusion and discrimination. And together with our partners, a lot of whom are our funded partners, we're helping the next generation to transform their lives through music. So Youth Music's Shift the Scene Fund works across the arts, and it's financed with National Lottery funding, which we receive through Arts Council England. So Youth Music has a set of funding principles, and I thought it might be useful just to kind of talk to you a little bit about those so you can see that where we're coming from as a funder. And these really sort of guide the way that we work, particularly within the team that Jess and I are in, the grants team. So we're accountable to these, and we measure ourselves against them in our annual feedback survey. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is, we want people to have the best experience possible when they apply to us or when they have a grant from us. So I'll just read them out to you. They are: be accessible, be participatory, don't waste time, ask relevant questions, accept risk, act with urgency, be transparent, be flexible, be clear about relationship, and have light touch reporting. You might see that the flexible principle is being highlighted there. I just wanted to, I think it's particularly important to this fund. with this being it's over a 4-year program, we know that things are going to change. And so we've tried to kind of like design that into the application process, but also just to say that if you did receive a grant from us, then there'll be flexibility as we go on in order to be responsive to that. So the Shift the Scene overview. Shift the Scene is a fund for disabled children and young people, pushing for genuine inclusion, ambition, and accessibility across all art forms. Through advocacy, creativity, and community, we want organisations to shift the scene and create spaces where disabled voices lead. In this one-off fund, grants of up to £200,000 will be made available to organisations for work that is sustained over a 4-year period. Opportunities are funded across all art forms, not just music, for children and young people aged 9 to 30. And this is Youth Music's second fund investing in more than music. This is in response to Arts Council England's Let's Create strategy and the requirements of our national lottery funding. But why did we decide to create this fund? Well, we know that disabled children, young people and adults still face disproportionate barriers when accessing the arts, creative education and employment. In our latest research, Excluded by Design, we found that their participation in arts is lower, it's shorter term, and it's more likely to be home-based. They frequently encountered discrimination, fear of judgment, lack of youth voice and agency, limiting expectations, and tokenism. And we also found that representation remains scarce. Just 9% of the workforce of regularly funded arts organisations are disabled, compared with 16% of all people in employment in the UK. And what we've tried to do through the funding criteria and principles is really respond to these findings. Jess, am I okay to pass over to you to take us through the next few?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. So we've come up with these Shift the Scene principles. On the upcoming slides are the beliefs and principles that have guided the development of this fund. So to apply for Shift the Scene fund, you must align with them. We've designed them in response to the Excluded by Design report findings, working with our Shift the Scene steering group, and you can find out more about the group on our website. So we don't expect you to have it all sorted, and you don't need to be an expert or experienced in all of these areas, but we do expect and value your honesty about where you need to develop.
Sorry, my computer's being a bit slow, Jess. I'm trying to change to the next slide.
Drum roll, please. So the first principle is trust. So it's clear from our conversations that young disabled creatives have been let down many times, and for some, the trust is gone. For us, the most important thing to do is do no further harm. Therefore, it is essential that one of our principles is to build back that trust and fund authentic and genuine organisations who provide safe and supportive opportunities for disabled young people. The second principle, so learning and developing. Youth music's practice is constantly developing and we're still learning. We want to partner with organisations who do this too. This means evaluating and reflecting on what you do, being open and honest about what is and isn't working. The third principle, amplify disabled voices and representation. Young disabled voices may play a central role in shaping your programme. By voice, we mean the various ways that young disabled people articulate their opinions, insights, passions, and needs. Having disabled people actively involved throughout the organisation in both delivery and leadership is crucial. Lived experience brings invaluable insight and meaningful representation and makes a real difference. Number 4, anti-ableist. We believe every organisation should be actively anti-ableist, advocate for the rights of disabled people, and operate in line with the social model of disability. Fifth principle, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, and we call this IDEA. We believe that work with disabled young people should be inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible. For us, there is a particular importance and focus on access from the start. We believe true accessibility means building access and inclusion into every project from the start. It should never be treated as an afterthought. Addressing intersectionality. We recognise that supporting disabled young people requires an understanding of how intersectionality significantly shapes experiences within the disabled community. The sixth principle, creative ambitions. We believe that disabled young people's creative ambitions should be at the heart of creative practice. This should take priority, and organisations should provide genuine pathways to facilitate this. Organisations should be ambitious and want to push boundaries within their creative practice. The seventh principle is well-being and safety. We consider participant and staff well-being a critical aspect of this fund. This extends beyond physical safety to include mental, emotional, and social support. Organisations are responsible for creating an environment that protects people's health, well-being, and human rights, ensuring they can participate without fear of harm, abuse, or neglect. Access to resources and care needed to support safety and well-being should be prioritised at every stage of the process for staff and participants. And the eighth principle is partnership working. We believe that working in partnership with other organisations, adults, and young people is key to enabling deeper learning, development, and a better creative world for young people. So there are 8 principles for this fund. I'm now going to talk a bit about what the organisations that this fund is for. So the fund is for organisations that work across any creative discipline, so not just music. We envisage funding 1 or 2 music projects, but music will not be a majority focus of this fund. Already actively working with disabled people across all parts of their organisation, so i.e. as participants, volunteers, freelancers, and staff. Organisations that have built trust with disabled people, are anti-ableist, advocate for the rights of disabled people, and operate in line with the social model of disability. And organisations can amplify young disabled voices and already have established ways of co-creating with young disabled people. This fund is for organisations that are ambitious, who want to push boundaries within their creative practice, with disabled young people's creative ambitions at the heart. They prioritise inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, and in particular those who design in access from the start and think about diversity and inclusion through an intersectional lens. Prioritise participant and staff wellbeing and safety, and for organisations who are actively reflect on what they do and are open to learning and change and have strong partnerships in place. So the fund is not for organisations, new organisations, it's not for individuals, not for organisations in Scotland and Wales, one-off or short-term projects, organisations that don't have a track record of creative work with disabled young people, organisations that aren't looking to learn and develop their practice, organisations without established youth voice or participatory structures, organisations for whom this work is not part of their core purpose, and this fund is not for schools, although schools can be a project partner. So these are the Shift the Scene fund dates. Online application form. So this is available from the 31st of October on our online portal. Then the stage 1 deadline is 5 p.m. on the 28th of November 2025. Then stage 1 notification is Friday, the 6th of February 2026. Interviews, the stage 2 candidates only, so that's Monday the 23rd of February to Friday the 6th of March 2026. And then you'll be notified on the Friday the 27th of March 2026. And this is for projects starting May to September 2026. And then we also have the Shift the Scene community. Participation in the community is mandatory. The community includes quarterly online sessions, 1 face-to-face meetup per year, centralised research or evaluation, but this is not part of year 1, and then centralised advocacy and communications activity. And please remember to put this in your budget. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. And I'm just going to take a second now to walk you through the web page, just so everyone knows where everything's kept. So this is the Shift the Scene fund on our website. If you were coming from the homepage, the way that you would navigate to this is just by just hovering over this funding menu, and then you'll get a drop down, and you can see at the bottom there it says Shift the Scene Fund. So up here is just a little bit of key information about the fund. And if you scroll down, this is where you can access all of the application guidance and the application form questions. And we've got those in various different formats. So we've got the guidance, we've got an audio version of the guidance as well. And then if you carry on scrolling down, you'll see some key resources to support your application. So there's a set of frequently asked questions. This is where you'll go to get more information about access support, which I'll talk about in a sec. If you want to access the report, then you can get to it from that box. And then the Shift the Scene project examples, we've got a number of examples that we've put together about the types of activity that could be funded through this, so that could be useful as well. Now, when the time comes to actually make your application through the online grants portal, the way that you get to that is through this red section here, so apply to the Shift the Scene Fund. So if you click on this apply now on grants portal, and how do I move this? I'm just logged out there, just log out a second. So that'll take you to this page. If you haven't applied for youth music funding before, you'll need to register on this system. So you just do that through this box here. Otherwise, once you're registered, this is how you log in. And when the form becomes available on the 31st of October, you'll be able to access it through this page here. Just to emphasize again, all of the application questions are available now. So yeah, you can be preparing your application if you haven't already started. And then just to say a little bit about access support. So if you identify as disabled and require additional support to help you make your application to youth music, we've got an application access fund. So we offer funding of up to £900 for this first part of the application stage, and you should apply for this money before you start your application. So you could be applying now. We aim to get you a response within 5 working days, and then after that to pay you within 15 working days. We also fund personal access costs, and these should be included as part of your grant request. If you've been onto the access page of our website, you'll know that this is slightly different from how we normally do it. So normally you apply for access costs kind of on top of the grant. However, because we anticipate that the majority of organisations that we fund actually will have access costs within their budget, we've adjusted the grant amounts accordingly. It just makes it easier for us to budget. So make sure you put these in your budget if they apply to you. Back to you, Jess.
Thanks, Carol. So in the next couple of slides, we've kind of taken all of your questions from the Eventbrite and kind of put them into different categories, and hopefully we'll have some answers to most of those questions. And obviously if we haven't covered anything, you can still pop them in the chat. So I'm just going to run through some of them, and then Carol's going to run through the rest. So organisation eligibility. So you need to be a UK constituted organisation. And that includes local authorities, NPOs and venues. Local cultural education partnerships can apply so long as there is a lead applicant within the partnership. So schools can't be lead applicants. And so any size organisation can apply, and we welcome applications from grassroots organisations. You must be legally constituted and providing activity for at least 1 year before you apply to this fund. Youth music funded organisations can still apply. So just kind of cover a little bit about partners. So schools cannot be lead applicants, but we recognise that they might be a good venue or delivery partners, and youth music funded partners can also be your partners as well. So the next one is about the grant length. So this is a multi-year grant. Grants will last for 4.5 years from May 2026 to September 2030. Between May 2026 and August 2026, you can take time to plan and set up your program. This might include initial co-design or consultation, staff recruitment, development partnership agreements, finalizing delivery plans, booking venues, and recruiting participants. The creative program delivery should start by the 30th of September 2026, but you are welcome to start before that if you're ready to go. We want activity to take place over the full 4 years from this time. You should have an overall plan for all 4 years of the program. However, at the application stage, we only expect detailed plans for year 1. Full delivery plans for years 2, 3, and 4 will be developed in response to your year 1 delivery. So about the participants, Shift the Scene Fund is specifically for disabled children and young people. If you work with disabled people and non-disabled people, then we would expect the vast majority of participants supported through this funding to be disabled. We also recognise that intersectionality plays a significant role and that disabled individuals often face additional barriers. So participant ages, so this is 9 to 13 years old. Within this bracket, you can work with specific ages or different ages depending on your program. And we expect a high number of young adult programs, so that's 16 to 30 bracket, being submitted. So success rates for these applications will be slightly lower. We use the term disabled people to encompass the terms deaf, disabled, neurodivergent, and including people with long-term health conditions, including mental health conditions. The number of participants on your program will vary. We're not looking for a specific number. And about the budget, we expect most organisations to apply for the maximum 200,000 over 4.5 years. There is a minimum request amount in place, and that's 50,000. So usually no more than 20% of youth music grant can be spent on capital costs. And that's items that have a use which extends beyond the grant, or that could be sold on once the grant has been completed. All staff working on the programme must be paid at the real living wage rate or above. You must commit to raising at least 20% match funding, with a minimum of 10% in cash match funding. Provided some of your budget is being spent on delivery costs and your budget makes sense in the context of your proposal, there is no set requirement on how your budget is split between delivery costs and core costs. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about programme eligibility now, because we had quite a few questions around this. So the first thing to say is projects don't have to be new. In fact, actually, probably what we're expecting to see is projects that are kind of building on some kind of existing provision. But if you do have an existing project, you could use Shift the Scene funding to scale up, work with more participants, or broaden your scope of activity. We would fund pilot activity, so if you wanted to trial something new, but if you're new to this type of work in general, then this is probably not the fund for you. Somebody asked about clarification about different types of art and creative forms. So the main focus for this fund, just because of the funding, is Arts Council art forms and kind of work. So that incorporates combined arts, dance, literature, music, theatre, work with collections and cultural property, work with libraries, and work with museums. Other creative disciplines, such as design or programming, could feature, but shouldn't be the main focus. Shift the Scene has an emphasis on community-based activity, as this is where disabled young people are particularly underrepresented. This is why we say that activity can't take place in school curriculum time. We had quite a few questions about what types of activity we'd expect to fund. So I would urge you to just have a look at the project examples section on our website if you were one of those people that asked it. But this is an example of one of the project examples we've put together. Now, obviously, these are quite short. So they're probably not going to speak to every single part of the criteria, but it's just to give you a bit of a flavour of the types of activity that we might be funding. So I'll just read this one out. Creative Futures is an inclusive visual arts programme designed specifically for deaf young people aged 12 to 16 in Hartlepool. The project aims to build confidence, creative skills, and community through accessible and collaborative art making experiences. Participants will explore various visual art forms: painting, mixed media, digital art, photography, and installation, guided by professional artists with lived experience. The programme will include public exhibitions in the local gallery that they've partnered with. The exhibitions will be planned and executed by the young artists, giving them project management experience and a platform to share their art with the wider community. The gallery will also host 2 work experience placements for the participants each year and 2 paid summer internships. All staff at the gallery will have deaf awareness training. In addition, there will be 4 places each year to begin BSL Level 2 training for staff from the charity and the gallery's front of house team. Somebody asked a question about whether they needed to show legacy in their application form. What we would say to that is that we've tried to design in the legacy through the programme criteria, and that by that we mean for participants, for the local infrastructure, and for the wider sector. So you don't necessarily need to really bring that out within your application. Somebody asked about what we mean by boundary pushing, which we've used somewhere in the guidance notes. We don't have a formal definition, but what we probably will expect to see from organisations is applications, organisations that are doing things that aren't kind of standard practice across the sector yet, that are changing the infrastructure for disabled people in the arts, are creatively ambitious, or that will challenge people's expectations of disabled people. The scale and scope of projects are really going to vary, and that's going to be dependent on the size of your organisation, who your partners are, who you're working with, and what other resources you have access to. Just to say for youth music, it's not all about the numbers, it's really about the kind of quality of experience that people are going to have. And also to say that projects don't necessarily need to be designed with scalability in mind. I think a lot of this work is quite locally specific, and there will be elements probably that can be scaled by other organisations, but you don't have to kind of design that in when you're thinking about your programme. We had a few questions about partnerships. So just to remind everyone that what the partnerships criteria is, and that's that you need to have at least 2 partnerships in place that support young people's creative progression and integration. And that's really to kind of speak to something that we heard from arts organisations saying, well, you know, we've got a group of young disabled people, but it's quite hard to signpost them to other organisations because we don't trust that they're going to get a good experience. So that's where that criteria came from. So we want partners to add value and to open up progression routes. They don't need to be specialists in working with disabled artists, but if not, they need to be kind of open to learning and to going on that journey, working with you over the course of the 4 years. New partnerships are eligible, but if you are forming new partnerships specifically for this fund, you should really kind of know that your partner is going to align with the Shift the Scene principles, and again, that they're prepared to go on that journey if they need to. I think somebody asked what makes a good application, which is probably could be a workshop in itself. So we've just pulled together some real sort of headline top tips. So the first thing to say is if you are applying, you should be confident that you meet the principles and the criteria. This is not the application. It's not the fund if you're just having a punt on something, because the principles and the criteria are so specific. Yeah. What we would also say is get someone else to have a look at the application before you submit. Even if we know you, please don't assume any knowledge. So our applications will get assessed and reviewed by multiple different people. So yeah, they're not all going to know you, even if some of the team do. Be specific where you can be honest, and link to that, use AI with caution. So don't use AI. If we've asked you a question about what you've done, or something that's very specific to your organizational practice, then we'd recommend that you don't use AI for that, because what we want to see is an honest reflection. And then also just to say that if you're unsure what we're getting at with a particular question in the application form or what's expected, then by all means just get in contact with us. We had a few questions about what the final portfolio is going to look like and whether we'll be kind of looking to have a balanced portfolio across the organisations that we fund. So we think we're going to end up funding around 10 to 12 projects in total. And that portfolio is likely to include projects with a mix of participant ages, backgrounds, barriers, and access needs, a mix of geographies. So we may not have one in every region, but we will try and aim for some kind of geographical spread. We might fund two projects that are close together if they were doing very different things. However, if you know that there are local organisations who want to do similar things to you, we recommend that you join up on an application. Within the final portfolio as well, we think there's going to be high representation of disabled people within the organisations and the staff teams. And then we'd also like to see organisations with different art form or practice expertise who can then really be part of the Shift the Scene community so that we can learn from each other. Moving on to reporting and payments. So if you are successful, you'll be asked to complete annual reports to us. At the outset, you'll sign a funding agreement and return a set of initial grant conditions that will help you draw down your first payment. If you are successful, you'll be invited to an induction session where we'll kind of talk you through all of this and you'll get to meet the other project participants. The reporting framework actually, in all honesty, will probably be getting developed over the course of the first year while we're in conversation with you. But if you want to have a look at the types of reporting that we do, you can go onto our website and have a look at the Catalyzer Fund. The interim one will be the one that you would do each year, and then the evaluation one will be the one that's done at the end. Right, we've talked to you for quite a little while now. So what we propose to do is just have a little 5-minute break, just stretch your legs, have a comfort break, and then we'll come back and we'll take the questions from the floor. So I can see there's been quite a lot of questions put in the chat, so we'll address those. Right, should we get started? We've got quite a list of questions. Jess, are you happy to kind of read them out and then I'll try and take them?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
great.
I think some of them might have been asked before we went through the slides, but I'll still go through all of them. So the first question, can you define what you mean by disabled? Does this include hidden disabilities?
Yes, it would include hidden disabilities. I know Jess had a definition of it before, so hopefully that is covered off now, but please shout if you need any further clarification from us.
So next question, what is the rationale for starting the age range at 9? Would programs engaging younger children also be considered?
When we did the research, we found that a lot of people were saying that the provision drops when their children gets to the sort of tween ages, the provision had dropped off. And because the focus of this fund is around kind of young people's creative development and progression, that's another reason why that we kind of decided to start at age 9. If there are a few children, younger children, like on the program, then they can be included. But really, the focus should be that kind of 9 to 30 age range.
So could you elaborate on what you mean by have strong partnerships in place?
I think when we were writing this, we were thinking about the fact that perhaps these partnerships are going to be kind of you as the lead applicant might be working with your partner in almost like a critical friend role, kind of growing and developing their practice around working with disabled young people. And obviously, for that partnership then to work, there needs to be that trust there, and there needs to be kind of the joint buy-in around the value. So that's really what we mean by strong.
How much does this need to be a new activity? How much can it build on existing work?
Hopefully we've covered that off, but it doesn't have to be new.
So can a local cultural education partnership apply?
hopefully that's been covered off as well. But there will need to be one organisation within that partnership that's be prepared to act as the lead organisation, and effectively our funding agreement would be with that organisation.
So what do you define as new regarding an organisation?
I think that's probably covered off, but we expect you to have been providing activity for at least a year.
Your focus is not to fund many music projects. Can projects work across art forms?
Yes, they can work across art forms. So it might be one art form, or you might be working across multiple.
So a bit more about what you mean about being part of core purpose. Do you mean charitable mission statement etc. has to include disabled young people specifically?
Well, I'm just going to read out the next question actually, because they've kind of answered it. What are you expecting when it comes to core purpose eligibility? Does there need to be explicit reference to disability in our charitable objects, or is it more about the evidence of our work and beneficiaries? So it's the latter. It doesn't you don't have to have the word disability within your charitable objects, but you do have to have been working with young disabled people already.
Are you happy to match fund projects, or do you want to fully fund the whole project?
No, we're happy to match fund, and actually, there's part of a match funding requirement anyway for this fund, so we'll be expecting that we'll be match funding.
Could you elaborate more about what you mean by youth voice structures? Can this be embedded within the participatory practice rather than separate, like a youth board or youth steering group?
Yes, it can be embedded within your participatory structures. Um, I suppose we don't have a set definition of youth voice, but we'd kind of be looking at it in a lot of aspects. So yes, one thing about might be having a particular kind of governance structure around young people. Some of it might be in session in the moment in terms of the way that you co-design with young people. There might be other stuff around kind of youth leadership opportunities and developing those, and youth advocacy and that kinds of things. So we don't have a kind of singular definition of youth voice. And actually, if you think that you want to develop your practice around this, then this grant could be a great way of helping you do that across a 4-year period.
Please, can you clarify what you mean by putting the Shift the Scene community in our budgets? Is this in terms of offsetting staff time to participate or something else?
Yeah, it's about making sure that you've got that staff time budgeted. And then for the face-to-face meetings, it's just making sure you've got some travel and accommodation and that kind of thing within the budgets.
Can you talk about eligibility for this fund for MPOs, especially considering the crossover into currently unknown MPO extension processes and potentially an overlap into a new MPO phase? And considering the nature of this funded activity should be embedded into our company-wide work.
I'm not quite sure what the last bit of that means. I wonder if you are an MPO and you don't know about your future, I wonder if it just means that you might have to budget slightly differently. So if you have your money from your MPO confirmed up to a certain point, and kind of, wanting to kind of use that, or it's supporting an element of the project, then you might just need to be cautious after that point and think about from that aspect. So I don't know if I've been very clear that, but I wasn't 100% what the question was. Did anyone want to just speak to that question?
That was my question. I can chip in. It's Helen here.
Hi.
Yeah, it's just around obviously with the Arts Council funding being across youth music funding and then MPO funding. Just wondering how whether if obviously this kind of work needs to be embedded across the organization. It's not like, oh, and suddenly we're just now doing this project with disabled young people. Therefore, if you're already an MPO and your work's already funded by Arts Council that way, like, does this work have to be very distinct from MPO funded work? And then obviously the time scale also crosses over into unknown processes when we might have a different MPO funding agreement. So it's just going, can it blend, or does it have to be distinct? And how does that work when it's crossing over into time when we don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen with MPO?
Okay. I mean, I think it will blend, isn't it? Because it's like you say, it runs across the organization. I think probably what we'd have to do is just we talked about that principle around flexibility. So if your situation did change between MPO application rounds, then we'd just cross that bridge when we came to it in terms of how the project might need to shift accordingly.
Okay, so there wouldn't be an issue with them being considered sort of double funding, for example, if you're already getting Arts Council funded through MPO and then you were successful with this grant.
No, I was just trying to remind myself what the match funding criteria is and if there's any restrictions, because we can't match lottery with
Yeah, I
lottery.
saw that one. You can't use that
Yeah,
as the match funding. It was sort of activity plans with MPO. Obviously, we already have work that is of this nature within our activity plans with MPO, but then we want to scale it up. So, but you can't go, we're going to scale it up and it's a separate project.
yeah.
Obviously,
No,
it would still have to be connected. I think this issue comes up quite a lot with Arts Council funding across
okay.
Heritage Lottery or Youth Music or MPO.
Okay, well, from our side, it will be fine for that to be kind of integrated, if you like, because
Okay.
actually what that's just doing is bringing more resources to an area of work.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And the next question would be, would you provide a budget template, and can you please confirm the percentage of the budget to be allocated to overhead costs? And do you need signed letters of intent from our partners, or can we just name them?
Hopefully this was covered off before. We tend to call overhead costs core costs. And as Jess was saying, there's no kind of minimum or maximum that you need to put in to your budget. So you can be flexible about that. As long as there's some money in there for delivery costs, then you're fine to get your core costs covered as well. Do you need signed letters of intent? Yes, we do, or emails. And if you wanted to have a look at the application form template, it should kind of run through exactly what you're going to need for your application.
So do you have to raise full 40k before being awarded the grant, or can you raise annually?
No, you can raise that annually. You don't have to have it at the outset.
Based on your last Energizer fund, what do you expect to be the percentage success rate for this fund?
Well, Energizer was 14%, but I think we've had more people on the Q&A than we did for Energizer. So yeah, expect it to be around that, sadly quite low.
Do participants need to still be age 30 or under by the end of the 4.5 years?
Good question. They should be under 30 when they start on the program, but if they end up turning over 30 at some point in the 4 years, then that's fine.
So there's a couple of questions about this, but can you clarify school curriculum time? Does that mean that we can't run activity during the school day, excluding break lunch times?
Yes, that's what we mean by school curriculum time.
So RE access support, it's noted in the guidance that participant access costs can't be covered as part of the access pot. Mostly our participants will be people labelled with PMLD, but also some of our participants will be our learning disabled leaders. Could their access costs be included?
Yes, they could. I'm just trying to think about the section, the guidance that this applies to, but basically, normally it's a bit weird because, as I was saying before, we have like personal access costs of people who are working on the project as kind of separate from the overall kind of budget. However, it's all integrated in this, so we'd be expecting to see participant access costs in there and personal access costs for kind of staff in there as well.
Our dance pathway has an outreach element in SEND schools. Would that part of the work not be eligible as it's in the curriculum time?
It wouldn't be eligible. I was just trying to think there in terms of like the outreach and whether like any sort of taster activities, for example, might be eligible, which it probably would be, but the kind of core activity shouldn't be taking place in school curriculum time.
Partnerships. If we're an existing youth organisation with a disability focus, should we assume we need 2 arts-based partners?
Well, I think definitely one of the partners would need to be an arts-based partner, but not necessarily both of them.
Many of our young people we work with often with struggle to engage in creative outside of the support structure of their school due to their disability and other circumstances. We are based in an isolated area with very little arts provision venues. Children, young people often live far from venues provision, sometimes live far from school in very isolated areas, and have too high levels of anxiety, needs, or socioeconomic circumstances to start to engage outside of their only support structure of school, meaning school is an ideal place for them to start. Is there any flexibility in your policy not to fund activity in school time? This would really limit a model that works well for young disabled people in the community.
I really sort of was feeling empathy when I was reading that question, but what we're trying to do with this fund is give children opportunities that they wouldn't normally have access to in school. So something that's over and above what they do in school. So that's why that criteria is in there. I think maybe we can clarify through the frequently asked questions just what I was saying before about, if there's a kind of a small period of time where it is taking place in school just by means of kind of engagement activity, then that's probably fine. But we actually want the core activity to be outside of those school curriculum hours.
Can we use video of our work to support the application?
Yes, you can. I'm not sure whether you mean the actual kind of proposal document. So the proposal document, in inverted commas, can be a deck, it can be a Word document, or it can be a video. There's also sections in the application where we ask you to give us a piece of content that kind of shows your track record. So that could be a video if you wanted it to be.
Can non-disabled children be involved in the activity alongside a focus on disabled children and young people?
Yes. So we do want the main focus to be on disabled children and young people. So we expect the majority of participants will be disabled. But if you work inclusively across other groups and there's non-disabled young people included, then that's fine.
There's an option to use video slides or writing for the main overview. Could we apply with a half written and half video application?
Just trying to work out whether the application form would allow people to submit in two different formats. Can you remember off the top of your head, Jess?
I can't say for sure.
No. If it'll allow you to, then I suppose you could, but it's not the kind of standard practice for us. So yeah, maybe yeah, just trying to think. Yeah, it's probably best to just stick to one, to be honest, because I'm not sure that the application form would allow you to do half of one and half of another.
Can I ask about high representation of disabled people within staff teams? Have you considered what this looks like for organisations working with people multiple and profound disabilities?
Yeah, and I think, what we'll do is just take everything in context. So, but obviously, when we're talking about high representation of disabled people, and ideally, a lot of those will share the kind of lived experience of the participants that you work with, but we're just talking about disability kind of like broadly when we talk about representation. But yeah, and we kind of recognize that, different organizations are on different stages of their journeys as well. So we've said high representation, but we'll kind of take that on its merits and kind of take an individual sort of case by case approach to it.
There's a kind of continued kind of conversation about the schools and curriculum. I think we've probably answered it.
Well, do you want to take? Yeah, should we carry on doing the other ones,
Yeah.
and then if people want to kind of cut off at the end, and we can have a chat.
So, can we submit a Trailblazer and a Shift the Scene at the same time for the same sort of project? Obviously, Trailblazer would be a smaller 6 months, and this Shift the Scene grants would be bigger and deeper and would allow for certainty over 4 years. So, can we submit both?
I'm just trying to think what the timescales are for both of them. Let's have a quick look. Do you want to just go on with the next question while I'm just looking at the timescales on that?
So how do you deal with applications from deaf lead led organisations, I know we could submit a video application. If this is a BSL, presume we need to provide voiceover captions, or do you have someone who can assess in BSL?
I don't think we do we, Jess, at the
No.
moment? But yeah, I mean, we would have to find somebody to do that. So maybe we can have a follow-up conversation about that, and whether that could be covered through the application access costs, or whether we might need to think about a slightly different way. But basically, if we need to do that on our side, then we will.
Yeah, we do expand our kind of pool of external assessment advisors, so that could potentially be looked at. Should our budget include the match funding element? Example, display the budget as 200k included the 40k match, or could we apply for the 200 and say additional 40k match during the project? How will the panel assess the risk here? Would it be for us to demonstrate how our project could still go ahead without the match if worst case we didn't secure it during 1 year of the project?
Yeah, well, in the application form, the kind of technical side of it is that you would do your £200,000 with the youth music money, and then there's a separate section for match funding that says who are you getting the money from, what are you going to spend it on, and is it confirmed or projected? I suppose just to say that we're quite used to having organisations apply to us when the money's projected. Appreciate it's a very challenging funding environment at the moment, so if you applied for money and you didn't get it, we'd have that conversation, and you were awarded a grant from Youth Music, we'd have that conversation with you at the time in terms of what might need to kind of shift. So yeah, we see a lot of projected match funding, and really the only time when we'd have conversations about it being a massive risk is if it was the project couldn't go ahead without the match funding.
Can an element of the project earn money to make up the match funding? For example, selling a piece of art that has been created. How would this work with the fund not being able to cover profit-making activity?
It's more about profit-making activity, like for the organisation. So if it's profit-making activity that then kind of rolls back into the project, then that's fine.
Would craft making activities be eligible? Do they fall under visual arts, mixed arts?
Yes. I don't know if they fall under that, but they would be eligible.
Can activities take place in schools during regular school hours, but which is not statutory part of the curriculum?
I was under the impression that most special schools also followed the curriculum, so I would say no, but we might have to have another conversation about that.
We've been trading as a limited company for many years and have set up a CIC last month as we plan to gradually transition our outreach programs across to the new organisation structure. So we don't yet have a year one trading in that structure or set of accounts. Should we just apply as the original limited company which has accounts, or should we also include the CIC additionally as a second organisation?
If it's in the same name, then you could give us the CIC, you could apply under the CIC, but submit your accounts for the limited company. If it's not the same name, then I'd suggest you do it as the limited company.
If our provision is for 5 to 12 years, 13, 18, and then 18 plus, how would that work with under 9s? Should we only put the 13, 18, and 18 plus groups in our bid? Similarly, our adult groups are for all 18 plus, but the vast majority are under 30. Does this penalise us?
I think you would put the 13 to 18 and the 18 plus groups in your bid. If the vast majority of 18 plus is under 30, then that's fine.
Our provision fills the gap for when young adults leave college, they're under 30 and meet during the day. Will we be able to apply?
Yes, you would.
Again, can non-disabled children be involved in the activity alongside disabled children?
yes, they can be, but we expect the majority of young people to be disabled.
We embed work experience activities. Does this have to be solely based within the arts industry, or can we focus on experience that develop transferable skills?
I mean, it would be great if it was in the arts industry, because that's kind of one of the focuses of this fund, is to try and build that workforce of tomorrow. So maybe if you're already doing this kind of work in terms of work experience, perhaps there could be a partnership that you develop through the course of this project. That does mean it's going into arts as well. However, just great that young disabled people are getting transferable skills as well. So if there's a strand where you're already doing stuff, but it's outside of the arts, then that would be eligible.
And that's the end of the questions.
And it's the end of our time as well. Sorry, we were just talking about the Trailblazer crossover, weren't we?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still unclear just in terms of like what happens in the background and when decisions would be made. But yeah, I think you probably could apply to both, and then we'll just need to deal with it on our side, knowing that there's two applications in from the same organisation. So it might just be worth flagging it on your application when you apply. Was there anyone else? So we've still got some people on the call. Appreciate we've just run 4 minutes over. So anyone that needs to leave, feel free to toddle off. And thank you so much for being here today. When we send the slides out, it's got all of our contact details on as well. So if you need to have any kind of follow-up conversations, then you can. But did anyone want to ask a question that hasn't typed it in the chat? No. Okay, well, thank you so much. And yeah, happy to continue the conversation. Please do just get in touch if you've got any questions off the back of this, or once you've kind of had a thorough interrogation of the guidance notes and application form questions.